I work as an insurance adjuster for Lizard Insurance. My job is checking out cars after accidents to determine if they're total losses or if they can be repaired. I also write up the initial estimates for repair costs. Back in 2013, I was having a normal workday. I had to inspect two vehicles involved in a minor accident. Neither could be driven from the scene. They had flat tires, broken lights, and busted windows. The cars were at this tow lot that also had a contract with the state police. They stored evidence vehicles there in a special section behind a locked gate inside the secured tow yard. I finished examining the first vehicle and moved on to the second one. I was taking photos while listening to the album Cavalcade by the Flatliners through my headphones. From the corner of my eye, I noticed a woman who looked about 50 years old walking up to the police evidence lot. Somehow, the gate swung open. I didn't pay much attention since I was focused on my work. The cars I was dealing with were on the same side of the lot but about 50 meters away from the evidence section. With my back turned to this woman, who I'll call Karen, I took the last couple of photos I needed. The final one was of the vehicle identification number, which is located where the windshield meets the hood, almost on the dash. Suddenly, I felt a sharp tug at my ears. Karen had grabbed both cables of my headphones from behind and ripped them out. She started complaining about two cars blocking hers and preventing her from getting it out. I asked her not to touch me and told her I didn't think she should be in that area, but she cut me off. She criticized me for listening to music on the job and said I was slacking off and possibly stealing by taking photos of other people's belongings. I tried to point at the Lizard Insurance logo on my blue jacket, but Karen continued talking. She asked if I was going to do my job or if she needed to call the police because I was refusing to give her her property. I asked her if she had gone into the office at ABC Towing. She said she hadn't, explaining that she saw me here and wanted me to move the cars so she could get hers and leave. She opened the door and got into the first car that was blocking hers. I shouted at her to stop, telling her she couldn't go in there because it was police evidence. I pulled out my cell phone and called ABC Towing to let them know what was happening. Karen said if I wouldn't move the cars, then she would, and asked where the keys were. I told her that they were in the office with the employees. The manager came running out with one of those weird smartphone/Nextel style phones in his hand. He yelled at the woman to get out of there, telling her those cars were property of the state police. The manager used his Nextel to talk to someone. Then he noticed something that surprised me. The chain used to keep the lock closed had been cut with bolt cutters. Karen had been carrying bolt cutters and had thrown them into her car when she went back to it. The manager and Karen argued while I tried to finish my work. About 8 to 10 minutes later, 7 police cars came flying into the lot. The manager greeted the police and started explaining the situation, but Karen tried to tell the officers that I had stolen her car. The police told Karen to stand in a specific direction, with one officer assigned to wait with her. The lieutenant on scene was in charge of the county's police tow licenses. After getting the manager's story, the lieutenant came over to take mine. When I was explaining what happened, Karen heard and started yelling, trying to approach me. The female officer standing with her grabbed her by the arm, but Karen yanked free and shoved the officer, knocking her down. Karen was screaming as she charged toward me. The lieutenant stepped in front of me and used his taser. Karen went limp, face planted in the dirt and light gravel of the lot, and skidded slightly. They handcuffed her. Later, I found out that Karen had walked onto the lot carrying bolt cutters while I was in the office talking with staff about the 2 cars I needed to adjust. She had been roaming around until she spotted me near her car. Karen was charged with burglary, 2 counts of tampering with evidence, assault on a police officer, assault on me, trespassing, and resisting arrest. She did jail time, though I'm not sure exactly how much. Years later, the tow company that I now own impounded her car for being double parked. She recognized who I was and quietly paid the fee without saying anything. I used to be a police officer in England a few years back. My career took a turn when I transferred from emergency 999 calls, racing around in old Ford Focus cars, handling interesting situations, to a calmer position supporting a large shopping complex. My new responsibilities involved dealing with shoplifting and antisocial behavior. Our uniform was a white shirt, black tie, and when out on patrol, a stab vest over the top along with one of those tall police hats. During breaks, I put on my regular jacket to cover my shoulder numbers for personal security. To most people, I just looked like some guy in a white shirt and black tie. One day, I had just finished the paperwork for a shoplifting case and wanted a sandwich. I secured my vest and hat in storage but kept my utility belt on with pepper spray, handcuffs, and baton. I threw on my plain black jacket over everything and headed into the shopping complex to find a footlong. After ordering and paying at the sandwich chain, I went to the seating area to eat in peace. I hadn't been sitting there for more than 5 minutes when I noticed a woman at the counter making large gestures with her arms. I could tell she wasn't happy, but being unhappy isn't a crime, so I went back to my sandwich. That is until her voice grew louder and she slammed her hand on the counter. I threw the remains of my sandwich in the bin and walked over to see what was happening. Since I worked regularly in this shopping center, the sandwich shop staff knew me and my job. They looked more relaxed when they saw me, which seemed to irritate the woman. I quickly learned they didn't have the filling she wanted, and she was refusing to take no for an answer. I asked if everything was all right. The woman turned and looked me up and down. Being in my early 20s at the time, she thought I was a security guard and complained that she didn't need security, calling the worker a jerk for not making her sandwich. I told her that she needed to stop swearing and mentioned that I was actually above security. She didn't like this. She told me to get lost, saying all she wanted was her sandwich. Then she ignored me, going back to banging her hand on the counter and gesturing at the teenager behind the counter. I told her she needed to stop that behavior. She turned to face me again. She cursed at me and said she knew the management, threatening to get me fired if I didn't go back to standing around outside Debenhams. I told her I didn't care about her threats and warned her that her swearing was a public order offense. She asked what I could possibly do about it, calling me a jumped-up plastic policeman who couldn't interfere with her getting a sandwich. She told me to get lost. I warned her to stop swearing and causing a scene, and to stop hitting the counter or she would be arrested. She became more defiant, telling me not to tell her what to do and saying I was just a wannabe cop with no power to arrest her. She demanded to see my supervisor. She was slamming her palms on the sneeze guard with each word. I'd been patient, but enough was enough. I unzipped my jacket to show that I was a uniformed police constable. Her eyes widened when she saw the handcuffs on my belt. I told her she was under arrest according to Section 5 of the Public Order Act, explaining that the arrest was necessary to prevent injury to others and damage to property. I recited the standard caution about her right to remain silent while she stood there. I had no intention of putting handcuffs on her. I was twice her size, so it wasn't necessary. Instead, I guided her to a nearby table as she sputtered. I sat her down and called for a police car to pick us up. We sat there for another 30 minutes while she kept saying she hadn't done anything wrong. I decided to give her a penalty notice to resolve the matter. So her sandwich tantrum ended up costing her £80 instead of lunch. The sandwich shop staff nodded at me as I left with her. I never did finish my footlong that day, but seeing her face when she realized I wasn't just a security guard was worth it. From time to time, I put up with entitled people with my work, but nothing worth talking about or posting. Until this incident that still makes me shake my head. I'm a female, 36, in great shape because I'm a cyclist. I own a home rental business that my parents started and I took over when they retired. We have about 40 employees from office staff to maintenance crews. I spend a lot of time in court due to my business, so I avoid unnecessary legal problems in my personal life. It started during the pandemic when things were getting back to normal at the beginning of summer with retail stores reopening. I was out mountain biking with some friends on a late afternoon. On my way home, I stopped at a Walmart to pick up things to make dinner for my daughter and me. That's when I spotted my best friend with her child, who was turning 4 years old. She was buying him a bicycle for his birthday, which is right up my alley, being a cyclist. I offered to help them pick out the bike, calling myself Auntie, as I always do with her child. They were happy with my offer. I've always been like an aunt to her child. We found a good 16-inch wheel starter bike, looked at helmets, and I fitted the helmet to his head. While my best friend and I were chatting and her child was looking at other toys, I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around and saw this woman with her own child in tow. I recognized the Karen look. I said I was sorry if I was blocking her access to the shelves. She told me that now that I was done helping my friend, I should help her with choosing a bike for her child. I told her that I didn't work at the store and was just helping my friend. She said I did work there because I was wearing cycling clothes. Explained that I had just finished a bike ride about an hour ago and was only there to pick up some items when I saw my friend. My best friend tried to back me up by telling the woman that I really didn't work there. The woman told my friend to butt out and shut up, saying she wasn't talking to her. I suggested to my friend that we should leave and get away from this crazy lady. The woman became angry at being called crazy and threatened to have me fired. I repeated that I didn't work at the store. My friends say I can be scary when I'm mad. Being a tall woman, 5'10" and fit, I'm not small. We tried to walk away, but she grabbed my arm. I pulled out of her grip and warned her that if she touched me again, I would have her arrested. I tried to walk away again and she grabbed my jersey. She said I was going to help her and that she would report me to the manager. I told her to let go of my jersey. Then a Walmart manager came around the corner and the woman screamed at him, telling him to fire me for not helping her. The manager told her that I didn't work there and warned her to let me go or she would be escorted out of the store. The woman complained about how paying customers were being treated. I pulled my jersey from her grip and she tried to slap me. I grabbed her wrist and told her she had crossed the line. I twisted her arm behind her back using my judo and mixed martial arts training. She began yelling about assault and said I was hurting her arm as I held it behind her back. My best friend was recording everything on her phone while trying to keep her child calm. I told the Walmart manager to call the sheriff's department because I wanted the woman arrested. She said she would sue all of us and we would all go to jail. I twisted her arm harder as her kid cried. I walked her to the front of the store while we waited for the sheriff's department. Two deputy sheriffs arrived and I knew them both from my work. When I let go, the woman told them to arrest me for assault. One deputy told her to calm down, but she said I had assaulted her. The deputy warned her to be quiet or she would be arrested. My best friend, the Walmart manager, and I just stood there waiting for the deputies to handle everything, ready to answer any questions. The second deputy asked me what was happening. The woman was shocked that the deputy knew me and again told them to arrest me. The first deputy threatened to arrest her if she didn't quiet down. I felt bad for her child, who was crying while another Walmart employee tried to comfort him. The woman continued screaming until they handcuffed her. The manager, my friend, and I explained the situation to the second deputy. I decided not to press charges because I didn't want to spend time in court. I already spent enough time in court due to my work. The woman was banned from that Walmart. The Walmart manager said sorry and gave both my best friend and me $50 gift cards. I gave mine to my friend to help pay for the bike and helmet. I never got my dinner ingredients and told my daughter we would be ordering takeout. 2 weeks later, I was in my office at work. I had told everyone about what happened at Walmart. One day, my office employee came back with a couple. I was in my office with the door shut. My employee introduced them to my office manager, and they were going to sign paperwork on a home rental. My office manager asked if I could come out to meet the new renters. When I walked up front, I was shocked. It was her. When she saw me, she asked if I worked there. I said I did. She asked to speak to my manager, saying she would have me fired. Her husband looked embarrassed. I pointed to my office manager and said she was the manager. The woman told my office manager to fire me. My office manager said she couldn't fire me because only the owner of the company had that power. The woman asked to speak to the owner. My office manager pointed at me and said I was the owner. I told her that she was in my business, I would not be renting a house to her, and she should leave before I called the sheriff's department. She left with her husband, following behind. My sales employee joked about not getting his rental bonus. I laughed and said I would still pay the bonus since he had to deal with such a difficult person. He was happy. I grew up in a small town where fresh produce was common. When I moved to the big city for work 5 years ago, finding farm fresh quality became a mission for me. That's why I was excited when I heard about this local stand bringing eggs fresh from a farm. In our concrete jungle, this was like finding gold. The stand was only there for the weekend and word had spread fast. When I arrived, a huge queue snaked around the block. I almost left. My Saturday mornings are precious, and I plan to visit my mother-in-law at her assisted living facility after running errands. But the thought of those fresh, golden-yolked eggs was too tempting. My mother-in-law would appreciate them too. She always complains about the tasteless food they serve at her place. So I joined the line. For 45 minutes, I waited, scrolling through my phone and occasionally chatting with other egg enthusiasts. The line moved slowly but steadily. Finally, I was next, watching as the farmer packed eggs into cartons for the customer ahead of me. At last, it was my turn. I stepped up to the stand, took a breath, and opened my mouth to place my order. That's when I felt it. A tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see a well-dressed older woman with an impatient expression. The woman asked if she could cut in line, claiming she had an emergency and needed the eggs right away. I was taken aback. After waiting so long, being asked to give up my spot was irritating. I told her I had been waiting in line for almost an hour. She insisted it was an emergency and explained she only needed a dozen eggs before she could leave. When I questioned what kind of egg emergency she could have, she explained that she had an 85-year-old at home to look after and couldn't spend all day waiting in line. The way she said it, like it was some kind of trump card that entitled her to special treatment, irked me. I looked back at the long line of people who had been waiting just as I had. I tried to be reasonable, telling her that I understood her concern but had also been waiting. I offered to let her go ahead after I finished my purchase, but only if the people behind me agreed. The woman's face showed indignation. She repeated her emergency situation, emphasizing the age of the person waiting for her at home, her tone growing more demanding. That's when something in me snapped. Maybe it was the entitled tone, or maybe it was because I was already feeling guilty about making my mother-in-law wait longer than planned. I responded with fake surprise, telling her what a coincidence it was that I also had a 95-year-old at home waiting for me to look after. The woman's eyes widened. She accused me of lying. I clarified that my mother-in-law was actually 93, and I was on my way to see her. I added that she was expecting these eggs for a cake we were planning to bake together. I wasn't actually planning to bake with my mother-in-law. She can barely see well enough to read these days, let alone bake. But the little white lie felt justified. The woman stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She hadn't expected to have her own argument used against her. She sputtered that her situation was different, and when I asked how, she simply claimed she was in a hurry. I pointed out that everyone was in a hurry, which is why we all arrived early to wait in line. At this point, the farmer behind the stand cleared his throat and asked if there was a problem. Before I could respond, the woman pushed past me and told the farmer that I was being difficult. She explained her need for eggs for her elderly father and said I wouldn't let her go ahead. The farmer looked at me and then at the long line behind us. He told the woman that while he understood her concern, everyone had been waiting and it wouldn't be fair to let her cut. The woman expressed outrage, questioning whether anyone cared about senior citizens. A voice from behind us chimed in. An elderly gentleman who had been standing in line a few people back. He shared that he was 78 years old and had been standing there for an hour. He said age doesn't entitle anyone to special treatment, especially when everyone is waiting for the same thing. The woman's face turned red. She said she would go to the supermarket instead, dismissing our eggs as stupid before walking off. The farmer turned to me with an apologetic smile and asked how many eggs I would like. I ended up buying 2 dozen, one for me and one for my mother-in-law. When I told her the story later that day, she laughed harder than I'd seen her laugh in months. She praised my actions and said in her day, people understood the meaning of patience and waiting their turn. When I watched her enjoy her breakfast the next morning, I knew that waiting in that line had been worth it, entitled Egg Emergency and all.